Shall we check in on Canada's socialised healthcare system?
Do we have to? I'm somewhat worried.
Yes, because it's not going great. It's really not going great. So everybody knows that you'll hear from activists and lefties all over the place that if you have a completely privatised healthcare system, that what will happen is you either pay up or you die. Canada seems to be bucking this trend by having these people, by having their socialised healthcare system implemented a revolutionary new system of pay up and die.
You've piqued my interest.
I know is quite appealing to you as a form of population control, but I need to give credit where it's due to Possum Reviews, who I follow on Twitter, who posted about this the other day and brought my attention to it. And the first thing he pointed out was just the general long wait times you've got to expect in socialised healthcare systems, the same that we have over in the NHS.
Isn't it?
Obviously, the same thing can happen in private healthcare. It just seems to be completely ubiquitous among everywhere that has a national healthcare service like the Canada and the UK. So in 2005, the Canadian Supreme Court said that wait times for healthcare in Canada were so long they violated patients' liberty, safety, and security. What have they done about that? They've done very little about that.
Probably made it worse.
They have got worse, in fact. In 2021, the Fraser Institute found that the median wait time to see a specialist after a referral in Canada was 25.6 weeks. So about half a year. And
that's ridiculous.
And that's median. So average, that's about 6 months for probably the most small kinds of issues that you may have if you need to see a specialist. But this is the kind of thing you've got to expect. I know plenty of people who've struggled massively with, say, mental health services in the UK.
They're not great, are they?
No, they're not
basically,
great. They make if you've got mental health problems and you're looking for help from the NHS, prepare to get worse.
Well, the thing is, we got rid of all of our insane asylums, and I know that makes me sound very evil, just like, yes, we need to lock more people up. But for a lot of people, it will be for their own good. And I know that it's one of those things where it's, you are infringing on someone's liberty, but if you're in good faith evaluating that they are a danger to themselves or others, you can't have these people walking about. And we see that all the time with mentally ill people stabbing people or attacking people in Britain.
The entirety of San Francisco.
We don't have the funds to deal with these people properly.
Well, I actually know somebody, speaking of that, who got sectioned. And it was actually...
You made it sound like you did it. It's just like, I actually know someone who got sectioned.
No, I know somebody who got sectioned. Yeah, and she learned her lesson. No, and for the time for the way her life was going at that time, it was actually the best thing that could have possibly happened to her.
That's the whole point of it, isn't it? I mean,
she was a danger to herself, and now she's a mum.
I'm not a clinical psychologist, but I know enough that it is good for some people. I mean, am I going out on a limb here?
Shockingly enough, to be put in a situation where you're not going to hurt yourself or others and given constant care and treatment,
Who'd have thought?
Sounds useful. They're not all one flew over the cuckoo's nest. Although I don't think Josh would complain if they were. But if we go to the next one, this is the one that really caught my attention, which was saying, after assisted suicide was legalised in Canada, many severely ill patients have found themselves effectively forced into voluntary euthanasia by healthcare costs or even hospitals just refusing to treat them. Euthanasia is now the 6th leading cause of death in Canada.
That is actually outrageous, and I'm surprised this isn't like a
bigger
worldwide
issue.
Travesty, because to have euthanasia be legal, I mean, I believe that people who are suffering should be able to have the right to take...
If they're in the right state of mind to be able to make that decision.
For example, I had this conversation with Connor before. If you find out that you've got some debilitating condition, you can sign a form that says, once I get to this certain point where I have these certain symptoms, I no longer want to live. And then if you give it to someone you trust, then it should be fine.
Yeah, and that actually kind of coincides with the idea of letting somebody die with dignity. Because,
well, yes.
But also, if you sign an agreement like that, you should be able to have like a get out clause if they come to you to kill you and you decide, actually, no, I'd rather stay living, thank you. They're not just going to, they're not allowed to just continue to smother you with the pillow. But while we're on the subject of morality, you recently did a contemplations with Connor where you were talking about the morality of abortion. And I've not actually had a chance to listen to it yet, but I imagine that will be very interesting because
Connor... yeah, it was a very civil conversation, and sorry to cut you off.
Oh, no, you carry on.
But no, it was a very civil conversation. Although me and Connor differ in our views, we actually had lots of constructive points, and I feel like it's an exemplary case of arguing in good faith gets good results. Like, we didn't necessarily agree, but we knew that each other had good intentions, and therefore we actually answered lots of interesting questions in ways where we've not really seen that outside of this office in the public discourse.
Yeah, certainly on the case of abortion, that it becomes so emotional and so emotionally charged that people just end up screaming straw men at one another. So if you're interested in checking out a discussion between two people on different sides of the abortion debate that actually doesn't descend into screaming, check that out. It's premium content on the website. If you've not got a membership yet, you can sign up for £5 a month. So check that one out. But one of the articles that Possum Reviews was pointing to was this particular one from The Spectator, asking the question, why is Canada euthanizing the poor? Now, I see you're really trying to hold back your toothy grin right there.
Hey, Canada, stop stealing my moves.
Yeah, I know, Josh.
I'm joking.
I know that they owe you quite a lot of money for this idea they stole. But let's take an examination into it. So in 2015, the Supreme Court of Canada reversed 22 years of its own jurisprudence by striking down the country's ban on assisted suicide as unconstitutional, which was blithely dismissing fears that the ruling would initiate a descent down a slippery slope into homicide against the vulnerable, as founded on anecdotal examples. And don't you love that trusting the science has got to this point where you can foresee using this amazing thing called reason, the obvious conclusion of a path that somebody is or an institution is going to take, and they go, yeah, well, that's just anecdotal evidence, bro. Show me, have you got a source for that, bro?
The whole trusting the science thing really winds me up, because throughout my scientific education, the founding thing was doubt and not trusting stuff. So when people say trust the science, I feel like that's antithetical. Trust and science should be complete opposites. You should be doubting everything. That's the whole point of being a good scientist.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious deduction that you can make is, okay, assisted suicide now legal, terrible healthcare system with monster wait times. I can see these two problems colliding with one another, and they just go, source. Have you got a source for that? Citation needed, please. Anyway, the next year, Parliament then duly enacted legislation allowing euthanasia, but only for those who suffer from a terminal illness whose natural death was reasonably foreseeable. So this is at least adding in some clauses that make it a bit more difficult to just go straight ahead with it, to be pushed into it, say. But then it only took 5 years for the slope to come into view when the Canadian Parliament enacted Bill C-7, a sweeping euthanasia law which repealed the reasonably foreseeable requirement and the requirement that the condition should be terminal. Now, as long as somebody is suffering from an illness or disability which cannot be relieved under conditions that you consider acceptable, which is going to vary on a day-to-day basis for a lot of people.
So someone with dyslexia, they could suffer with that. And if they felt like it was bad enough, they'd be like, yep, that's fine.
Well, you're going to see some of the examples that we get to in a bit aren't too far off from that. And they can take advantage of what is now known euphemistically as medical assistance in dying for free, and it's MAID for short. And, at least it's
grotesque.
free. At least you don't have to pay extra to die.
Well, that's a small mercy, isn't it?
Imagine the savings. I mean, you talk about compassionate healthcare from Canada and the UK, these sorts of countries. Think of the compassion that goes into not charging someone extra to be killed. I mean, it's so ridiculous.
Oh, it's so dystopian.
Yeah, soon enough, Canadians from across the country discovered that although they would otherwise prefer to live, some of them were just too poor to improve their conditions to a degree that was acceptable. And not coincidentally, Canada has some of the lowest social care spending of any industrialised country. Palliative care, which as far as I'm aware is care to basically reduce your suffering if you've got...
When you're dying,
Yeah, when you're dying, is only accessible to a small minority, and waiting times in the public healthcare sector can be unbearable, to the point where the same Supreme Court legislated against it in 2005, so that's all clear there. Many in the healthcare sector came to the same conclusion. Even before C7 was enacted, reports of abuse were rife. A man with a neurodegenerative disease testified to Parliament that nurses and a medical ethicist, living up to the haughty title of an ethicist. All of these people who are ethicists tend to be terrible because they just know how to rationalise awful things. At a hospital, tried to coerce him into killing himself by threatening to bankrupt him with extra costs, or by kicking him out of the hospital, and by withholding water from him for 20 days.
That is like the textbook example of just being evil. I don't use that word very often. I use it very sparingly, but that is evil.
Yes, that is evil. That is abuse. These people need to be fired and put in prison. This is disgusting behaviour. Virtually every disability rights in the country group in the country also opposed the new law to no effect, and it's no surprise that they would try and oppose this. When the family of a 35-year-old disabled man who resorted to euthanasia arrived at the care home where he lived, they encountered urine on the floor, spots where there was feces on the floor, spots where your feet were sticking. If you stood at his bedside when you went to walk away, your foot was stuck. According to the Canadian government, the assisted suicide law is about prioritising the individual autonomy of Canadians. And so does that sound like you've got a lot of individual autonomy when the people who are supposed to be looking after you leave you to rot in your own filth, and then when you go, oh, I don't know if I can continue to live like this, they go, we've got this amazing form you could fill out. You don't have to live like this anymore. You don't even have to live anymore.
It's monstrous. It's the antithesis of healthcare, isn't it?
It really is. And here's some of the interesting reasons for it. Despite the Canadian government's insistence that assisted suicide is all about individual autonomy, it has also kept an eye on its fiscal advantages. Even before Bill C-7 entered into force, the country's parliamentary budget officer published a report about the savings it would create, whereas the old MAID programme saved about $87 million per year. A net cost count reduction, in the sterile words of the report, Bill C-7 would create additional net savings of $62 million per year. So it's purely economic. Just pure economics right here.
Just killing people for money.
Well, killing people to save money. So, when people pretend it's only private companies and private healthcare that would ever do anything to cut costs and make more profit, keep this in mind, please, because it turns out governments, when you actually look at them, when they actually have to administer services for the public, act like gigantic corporations. Except the only barrier they have is how much they're taxing you and how much money they're printing at the time. And even then, they'll still kill you if it saves a few pennies. Next year, the floodgates will open even further when those suffering from mental illnesses become eligible for assisted suicide. Although euthanistic doctors and nurses have already preempted the law, there is also already talk of allowing mature minors access to euthanasia too. So mature minors, I assume, would be people who are teenagers, the sorts of people who are probably going through hormonal changes, suffering from some form of anxiety and depression if they're not having the greatest time in school. So, of course, when these kids are like, oh, mum, I'll just kill myself, let's just give them an option to do so.
Well, this does explain at the very least why Keffels, someone with gender dysphoria, has fled Canada.
Yes, this does explain it, really, doesn't it? But yeah, mentally ill people and children, and mentally ill children, aren't just poor and unable to, potentially put up the costs that these hospitals are going to be threatening them with, it seems. But I would also say that these are the least likely people to be in a healthy frame of mind to make this kind of decision reasonably. But this does, Canada is inextricably linked with the World Economic Forum, given that Klaus Schwab penetrated the cabinet and has at least half of the cabinet as young global leaders from the World Economic Forum. So this does seem to me to be a little bit in keeping with the World Economic Forum's depopulation agenda. It's just a little bit suspicious that that a place that's so astroturfed by the WEF would implement a system like this. But yes, and as I pointed out, we've got euthanasia being the leading cause, is now a leading cause of death in Canada, number 6. And
I like how the headline here, and ethicists are freaking out. That's like a YouTube clickbait title.
It is a little bit. Even though the only example we've seen so far, the ethicist was all for it.
Of course they are.
Ethicists are freaking out because they're just so happy. Finally, the government's listening to us. So because of the broad eligibility, more than 10,000 Canadians have been euthanized in the most recent year that data was available, which I think would have been last year, because that seems to be the year that they really opened it up for rife abuse. And we've got disturbing reports from experts troubled by the laws, as reported in the New York Post. So Alan Nichols was a 60-year-old man with a history of depression and other medical issues. None were life-threatening, though. He was hospitalized in June 2019 over fears that he might be suicidal, but then he asked his brother to bust him out of hospital as soon as possible. Within a month, he'd submitted a request to be euthanized and was killed, despite concerns raised by his family and a nurse practitioner. His application for euthanasia listed only one health condition as the reason for his request to die: hearing loss. So, you know, the dyslexia joke he made, not too far off. And
I actually feel genuinely physically sick hearing about this. How can people who get into a profession that are meant to help people pressure people into consenting to commit suicide? It's about as evil can get.
I have to agree with you. And his family reported the case to the police and health authorities, arguing he lacked the capacity to understand the process and was not suffering unbearably. They say he was not taking needed medication, wasn't using his cochlear implant, and that the hospital staff has improperly helped him request euthanasia. So once again, you've got to put a human face on this stuff. These 10,000 people, they're not just figures. These people had families. These people had unique situations to them. And in a lot of cases, it seems, these people were either misled or pressured into taking the euthanasia option. We got this one, which was a chronically ill man releasing audio of hospital staff offering assisted death. Now, you know, once again, the sort of thing that we're talking about when we say, you know, you should be allowed to have a dignity in this sort of thing is degenerative disease that means you're going to be in debilitating pain for the rest of your life, or you're already terminal, or maybe you're really old, maybe in your 80s, late 80s, early 90s, and your quality of life is reduced to the point where maybe you don't want to carry on anymore. And your family, given you're so old, you've probably made peace with that. But then we talk about a 42-year-old man who launched a landmark lawsuit against a London hospital, several health agencies, and the Ontario government and federal government, alleges that health officials would not provide him with an assisted home care team of his choosing, instead offering, among other things, medically assisted death. This is what socialised healthcare ends up getting you. Foley suffers from cerebellar ataxia, a brain disorder that limits his ability to move his arms and legs and prevents him from independently performing daily tasks. Now, that is awful, but I'm not, you know, some kind of sick utilitarian who's going to say, oh, he's more of a threat he's more of a burden on society than he is a plus to society, so we should just kill him.
It should be his choice, obviously.
Yeah, obviously it should be his choice, and I'm sure his family would probably be happy to put up money to be able to help him in the situation, especially given that they seem to be supporting him in the lawsuit. And this is from 2018 as well, so this is before last year the restrictions were opened up. So this is what was going on while it was still slightly restricted in comparison to what it used to be. So he claims in his lawsuit, he claims that a government-selected home care provider had previously left him in ill health with injuries and food poisoning. That's fantastic. He claims he was denied the right to self-directed care, which allows certain patients to take a central role in planning and receiving personal and medical services from the comfort of their own homes. He's now sharing audio recordings of conversations he had with two healthcare workers at London Health Sciences Centre, where he has been stuck in a hospital bed for more than 2 years. In one audio recording from September 2017, he spoke to a man about what he's described as attempts at forced discharge with threats of a hefty hospital bill. When he asks how much he'd have to pay to remain in the hospital, the man replies, "I don't know what the exact number is, but it's north of $1,500 a day." The man is heard say, Foley expresses shock at the figure and tells the man he just read an article that quoted the Ontario Health Minister saying it's not legal for hospitals to coerce patients like this. The man is heard saying that the hospital does not use this conversation in every situation. It's only situations where somebody has a plan in the community that is feasible that they're going to accept, and that's okay, he says. Foley then says he's not been informed of a plan for his care and that his rights as a patient are being violated. You've already violated my preferences, so what is the plan that you know of? Roger, this is not my show, the man replies. I told you my piece of this was to talk to you about if you had interest in assisted dying. So we're just going to, basically kick you out of the hospital, and if you don't get kicked out of the hospital, we're going to charge you a ridiculous amount. You've already been mistreated when you have had home care, but there is a solution. You could just die. You could just let us kill you. This is not compassionate care. This is not any sort of healthcare that you would hope for from a place that bills itself as being compassionate and caring like Canada.
It's a good thing that he's a switched-on bloke, because he knows his rights. He knows how he should be treated. If someone didn't, for example, I'm not sure I would be as familiar with all of these kinds of rights that he understands being in a hospital. And if
especially when he's got a degenerative brain disease as well.
Yeah, it's
impressive and, like you say, quite remarkable that the man is switched on enough to know to record these sorts of conversations and be able to talk his way out of them. And I've not checked into it, but I really do hope that the lawsuit landed in his favour, because it's absolutely disgusting. I don't know how you could how you could excuse something like this. And the fact that it went on in 2018, there was a big lawsuit about it, and then in 2021, the Canadian government just opens up this law with less restrictions for further abuse, is disgusting. And the last one is that police are starting to investigate medically assisted deaths where the circumstances are questionable as to whether the person involved was in the right frame of mind to be able to question to be able to agree to this sort of stuff. So this was about a mother who was involved in a car crash. She had a concussion and possibly had post-concussion syndrome. They never really got to look into it because the wait times to be able to get an appointment to see what was wrong with her brain that was causing her to lose loads of weight and have, dizzy spells, etc., was so long that she never got to speak to it. But you know what didn't have wait times?
Was it the assisted suicide?
Yes, it was the assisted suicide. And now the two daughters of this woman, who was not in the right frame of mind to be able to make these sorts of decisions in 2021, late October, are getting a police investigation into it. So we'll see how that goes. But yes, socialised healthcare, living up to its reputation as always, not just killing people by accident now, killing people on purpose.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as this premium book club, Lawrence Wright's The Looming Tower, The Road to 9/11. If you want to follow what else we're putting out, like me, you can follow me on Getter at @CallumOnGetter. Thank you and goodbye.